Hey, Chicago, what do you say? This is the CHGO Cubs Podcast presented by PointsBet. Use the promo code CHGO when you sign up to get 2 risk-free bets up to $2,000. I'm Luke Stuckmeyer, and we got a full panel today. Cody Delmendo down there typing away on the old Twitter. He's got his new CHGO sticker if you're watching on YouTube. Ryan Herrera back from the ballpark, and Bryan Smith, our guest from Bleacher Nation. You also know him on Twitter as @CubProspects. Thanks for stopping in. We appreciate that, first of all.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me. I wish I had my Apple laptop to join me there.
That's all good.
All good. It's fine. We'll all be fine without it. The Wi-Fi is not great. You probably don't need it anyway. We're going to talk prospects a lot in the second segment of this. We'll talk a little bit maybe about the Braves series coming up. We'll start with what I call the good, the bad, the ugly. And we'll go backwards so that we end positive. Let's start with the ugly, which clearly would be losing 3 out of 4 to the Pirates. You know, we've said it many times on this podcast going into it. If you're going to compete for a playoff spot this year, you've got to be good against the Braves or against the Brewers and Cardinals. But you got to beat the low teams too. The Pirates took it to them. You know, sure, they could have won those games, but I mean, you can't lose 3 out of 4 to the Pirates. There's no way to spin it. There's no positive spin. They should be as mad as Kyle Schwarber with Angel Hernandez behind the plate. That's unacceptable, Cody.
Yeah, Luke, you put it perfectly. I could scream it a little louder if you want me to. I was pretty pissed off leaving the left field bleachers yesterday because it's not only is this year a developmental year, but you also want to see some progress with the team as well. And, I just did not understand why we didn't have Nico Hoerner or Alfonso Rivas in the starting lineup yesterday. I straight up didn't understand it, and I'm not someone who is in the replies on Twitter yelling about David Ross's lineups every day, but that one was what are we doing? Because Rivas and Hoerner had a great Saturday, and Hoerner was having a great week, and you had an off day today, which is why we're here, why Bryan is here, and we're going to talk prospects today. You had an off day today anyway. Why not one more day with them? I understand Hoerner has injury history, and you want to get Frank back in there too, but you got to find a spot for those 2 guys after the day they had on Saturday. And that's my biggest gripe about the entire weekend because, you lost the first 2, but at least after winning 21-0, you could go into this off day feeling a little bit better if you win yesterday, go into a series with the Braves who honestly aren't playing that great right now. Now it's you just lost 3 of 4 to the Pirates. To the Pirates.
Right. Who are technically not even trying to win this year.
Yeah. It's so – it makes my blood bubble because – I understand it's a developmental year and we're trying to figure out who we got for the next great Cubs team. But, man, do I want to be led into July with some hope. I want some hope in July, Luke.
I mean, if you can beat a team by 21 runs in a game and you can win the run differential in a series like that, you're clearly as good, if not better, than that team. And that's a team they should be winning 3 games at, especially with the schedule coming up. I mean, there's no easy games the next 2.5 weeks now, so –
that's even better point. That's
the bad part. You've got the Braves, the White Sox, the Brewers, and the Dodgers for your next 4 series. You have to take advantage of playing the Pirates at home.
Oh, it's going to be tough for sure. Bryan, you were there yesterday. You said, what did you see out of that Sunday game, that Sunday matinee? You could tell why did the Cubs lose that game?
Yeah, Justin Steele, was just okay as a starter. I think another day where he sort of struggled with his fastball commands, struggled to get his fastball by people. So that's something that's going to have to improve if he's going to stay in the rotation. Other than that, in the 9th inning, it was right there. I had my 7-year-old son there, and I was so ready for his like first walk off at Wrigley. You know, I mean the vibe in the stadium was really great, and bases loaded, 1 out. I mean, that's you got to do it. You got to score there. So that's a really tough way to lose a series, especially.
Yeah, because like Contreras, I don't think you would have want anyone else up there in that moment. I mean, maybe Suzuki, but he was already on base, right? Like, I don't think there was anyone else in that moment that you would want at the plate than Wilson Contreras. And I don't know how you guys would feel about this, but sometimes he gets in those big moments, and I feel like in a way he kind of overthinks it, and he just is, impresses, exactly. And like, he just gets a little too aggressive, and he goes chasing, and I just didn't understand it. And then I know you can complain about Ortega not being sent home too on the Suzuki double. There's a lot to that, but at the same time, the Cubs just left so many guys on base over the weekend too. So.
Well, we're talking about the bad and the ugly here. And, you mentioned the lineup, which people were wondering, obviously, why Rivas wasn't in there. The problem I had with Hoerner not being in there is there's very little margin of error when you're not winning 21-0, which, lucky for Cody, you saw the biggest blowout in Cubs history. Cool. You'll never forget that. But that game is going to be few and far between. Even in a 10-0 game, it's going to be few and far between for this Cubs roster. That's just not the way they're built. They've got to do the small things really well. VR has been great at the plate, but you tried to put him at shortstop, and he's got the yips or something's going on. Like defensively, he's struggling, and now you're talking about your defense up the middle, and he struggled again a little bit. So it's like, that's why I wanted to see Hoerner in there. I know you've got to get him some rest, and there's tougher teams coming up, but this is a team in your division, and you had a chance to at least get a split against them.
Right.
And
I think I tweeted after VR made that first error, I was like, I know everyone hates Simmons. Like, no one was excited about the Simmons signing.
You would have liked him.
But if you're going to give Nico a day off, we would much rather see him at short than VR. And it's hard to like even get mad at VR because he's been really good for the Cubs with the bat at least. And it's just like, I don't know. Like,
but especially if you think
frustrating
Simmons is only a week or 2 weeks away, then
just wait.
I don't think it's asking too much to ask Nico to play. I mean, he's a young guy. He's coming off a 21-0 game in perfect weather.
Right.
He didn't get pressed in that game like a normal day would. So that was too bad. I mean, the stat sheet even will remember it better than it was for VR because they changed one of those errors back to a hit. So.
Yeah. And he got the one, was it the first game or maybe the Tampa Bay series? It was Jan Gomes got charged with the throwing error that kind of just like went through and just nutmegged VR.
And I'm not saying don't play him. I just think for right now, until whatever is going on with him is fixed, if it's fixable, DH or pinch hitting would be his role right now more than it would be sticking him in at shortstop in the middle of the
I mean, he hasn't made any bad plays over at second the few times he's been over there either. So like, the thing is like we're good at second base, whether
they don't have a shortstop.
It's just the Simmons not being healthy for the first month of the year is what's kind of forced VR. Because I think if Simmons is healthy, VR maybe plays second and third and just doesn't touch shortstop.
Exactly.
It's Simmons and Hoerner with like how the Cubs want it to be, how it should be. So if you get Simmons back anytime in the next couple of weeks, like that's ideal. But if you really hate seeing VR at shortstop, you're gonna have to deal with that a few more times at least over the next couple of weeks because that's just the way it is. That's all the depth that David Ross has right now. And he, like you guys said, he wants to get Nico Hoerner days off. Nico has his own injury history from the last couple of years. It's again the same. Still the first month of the season, guys are still building all the way back up. No one played all 9 innings in a single spring training game. So like the first week and a half of the season was like the end of spring training really as far as ramping up. So guys are still this 2 weeks later, a week and a half later, it's still kind of trying to build up like that. And so
I think to me though, especially with Nico, it's like I said, it wasn't just Saturday. I mean, he had a great week. And like
he's off to a great start.
Yeah, you want to like keep riding that. And I felt like with a day off on today, like why would you not have him in the lineup yesterday? And again, like you have a chance to split the series with the team that you should have won 3 of the 4, and like that's what's frustrating to me. It's like what are we thinking? Like I was told we're supposed to be competitive in 2022, man. Like losing 3 of 4 to the Pirates does not bode well for that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, it not only should have won or could have won, they have to win.
Yeah.
3 out of 4 at least from the Pirates. One more bad and ugly before we get to the good, and that had to be batting against their bullpen.
Yeah.
I had no idea that the Pirates bullpen was going to be that successful. Maybe they really are that good, but the Cubs made them look like Cy Young a little bit out there. Like, they couldn't get a hit against the Pirates bullpen, except for Saturday, of course.
Yeah. And they did in the late innings too. Ian Happ had that homer, which was good. They all, like, what was it, the 7th inning? They had a couple guys on and failed to score. Like, that one hurts more than not scoring in the 9th, because if they had scored it before the Happ homer, then it's at least tied. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, to me, they just left a lot of guys on base over the weekend. And, like, the first 2 weeks of the season, we were all talking about how the Cubs are getting guys on base and they're finding a way to manufacture runs. And, like, I just feel like not even just the Pirates series, but even against the Rays, they left a ton of people on and just failed to, like, even just manufacture a run and, like, on a consistent basis.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned the bullpen. I mean, I guess you got to give props to Bednar for challenging Contreras and Schwindel with, like, just straight heaters, pretty much. Like, he said, hey, I'm giving you 96, 97, you hit it, and they didn't hit it. Like, you give props to him, but then you got guys like Will Crowe, who used to be a starter and didn't succeed there, but now he's coming out and shutting down the Cubs when he comes in. Chris Stratton, same thing. I don't think they scored off him this whole weekend. So it's like very surprising that, because like all the runs pretty much except for Saturday came in the first couple innings, I want to say, except the Happ homer. But that's where all like, and then they started out strong. The Thursday, Friday, Saturday, or Sunday started out strong. And you're like, oh, this is going to be a good offensive day for them. And then the Cubs don't do anything like after that. And that's where you're like, is the Pirates, like you said, is the Pirates bullpen actually that good? Like, these guys have succeeded against, they were striking out guys when we're talking about the Cubs being a very contact-oriented team, and like Contreras and Schwindel are supposed to be two of those guys. David Bednar comes out and just blows fastballs by him. Like, it was surprising to see.
Was he dropping F-bombs at the end of the game?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Saw that video
in the handshake line.
I like it. Let's bring the rivalry back. Although if you have a rivalry with the Pirates, that means you're in a different spot as an organization.
Yeah.
You mentioned Will Crowe.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a guy, as we go to the good for the Cubs, I look at Keegan Thompson, and we talked about this on a other podcast, but I know Corey and Brendan talked about it last night when they recapped the whole series, and the question was brought up, should Steele and Keegan now flip roles? This is my answer. No. And Will Crowe is the answer why. Right now you've got like 3 or 4 guys in the team that you can say, yes, they do that really, really well, and we've got that for the future. Suzuki in right field, don't touch him. Leave him in right field. He's fine. Wilson behind the plate. Okay, Wilson, fine. Keegan Thompson, it's early. It hasn't even been 20 games. Keegan Thompson has proven to you in a show-me season, this is a role he can be very, very effective in. You do not screw with that right now. You leave him there and let him do it. I don't care if it's all season. Why would you take him out of that role and throw him into something where you don't know what the result is going to be? You don't even know if the current result is going to continue. Do not move Keegan Thompson into a starting role. If that comes at the end of the season when you just want somebody to fill in and make a start, sure, give him a chance there. He's as valuable where he is now as he would be as a 5th starter. In fact, I'd argue he's more valuable where he is now than he would be as a 5th starter. If you can get, like I said, Crowe is a perfect example. He wasn't great as a starter, and that's not to rule out Keegan Thompson as a starter. He's perfect where he is right now. It's a small sample size. Keep him where he's at. Same with Steele. And by the way, if Steele doesn't work out as a starter, he might be able to morph back into that, and then you might
really good.
Then you might have 2 guys like that, and there's nothing wrong with that because that's the way the game is going anyway.
Yeah.
So it's a good. I don't want to see the chat starting to fill up with, should we move him into a start? Should he get the next start? No. He's one of the few answers you have so far in less than 20 games. Can somebody do this? He's proven to you in a small sample size, yes, he can do it. Don't screw with him.
I think it's not just the success he's having. It's the fact that the Cubs have been able to avoid pitching relievers 2 days in a row because Keegan Thompson's coming in and eating 3-4 innings at a time. So he's not only succeeding on the mound, but he's helping the next day have, more rested relievers.
Yeah.
And stuff.
Like on Friday, he pitched 4 innings, but it wasn't just like, I ate 4 innings and saved the. No, he pitched 4 innings, saved the bullpen, but also kept it at a 2-run game. Like that's a guy that can go out there and basically do a starter's workload, keep the game where it's at, and just shut down the other team. As obviously they hope the lineup was able to get something else going that didn't end up happening on Friday. But Keegan Thompson in that role is not only coming in and eating those innings and saving the rest of the bullpen, but also pretty much dominating the other team and making sure they're not running up the score any more than they already have.
I think we also need to wait for Wade Miley and Alec Mills to come back too.
Yeah.
More so Wade Miley in this instance, because I feel like Alec Mills is probably going to be what he has been, a versatile guy out as a spot starter or out of the bullpen. We've only seen 2 starts out of Leiter Jr. I don't know what the Cubs are going to do with him once Mills comes back. I know we talked about on that post game that he was much better the second time around, and maybe he'd be better as a 1 or 2 inning guy out of the bullpen as well, just based off what we see how he pitches the first time through the order. But yeah, I mean, it's like you said, Luke, too small of a sample size at this point, and we saw him as a starter at the end of last year too, and he really did struggle as a starter at the end of last year. I know he's different now, and he had a whole offseason to really work on what he needs to improve on. But again, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Just or don't change it. Whatever the saying is.
But you're right. Those guys are coming back, and when they do come back, that role is not going to exist anyways in the rotation. So why would you move a guy who's having all this success into a role that's only temporary and might not work?
Right.
Yeah.
Like that is craziness. Now the other guy, that's another good. We mentioned him already too. Is Nico, and he's been everything you ask. And I wonder how many positives or how many. When I say yes, they have this at this position. How many of those do you have to find this season for this season to be successful? Let's say Keegan Thompson ends up being one. Okay. Let's say maybe Nico shows you he can be the everyday shortstop because he's developing his defense, his hitting's been consistent, the contact's been there. Let's say Nico becomes 2. All right. Now they maybe find out that Suzuki's the guy in right. Okay, now you've got 3. Do you need 5? Even if it's a losing season and you don't make the postseason, if you could find 5 things for the future that you're confident in, I personally would think that would be a good season for the Cubs. Now, you'd like it to be more than that, but 5 that you can say, yes, I have 5 pieces for the future with the farm system that we're going to talk about in the next segment coming up. I would think 5 would be a fair number.
I think the more losing that takes place, if the season does go that direction, the more that you have to transition to just answering questions. You mentioned Alfonso Rivas. Like, he's an example of, if this team, I mean, you could even argue if this team starts winning, he should probably play more. But there's all sorts of guys that I think as the direction of the season changes, you can change their roles, you can play with things, and you can really experiment with who is one of those 5, one of those 6, one of those 8 guys. And that's what I'd like to see them start doing. And Michael Hermosillo, before this roster crunch at the end of April, I'd really like to see him just get, 2, 3, 4 starts in a row just to say, okay, is he worth keeping around when the roster cuts down to 26 in a week here? And so I'd like to see a little more question answering while they're playing.
Yeah, I'm with you. Speaking of Nico, Michael Cerami from Bleacher Nation, he tweeted out I guess they made a cool graphic, and he has a 133 weighted runs created right now, which for anyone who doesn't really know, it's 100 is like league average. So he's 33% above league average as an offensive player. He's 8th among shortstops. I think I said that right. I'm not like the biggest analytical guy, but and he has 3 defensive runs saved, which is 11th in baseball as well. So like he's just playing really well. Doing honestly, like I don't want to say I banked on it, but like I was like, this is his first real chance to play every single day and play really well. And, he's taken full advantage of it. A lot of people question if he could play at an elite level at short like he does at second. He's done that very well. And, I think to me, at this point, it is a question that is at least partly answered. I mean, we still got a long way to go. Can he do it for a whole season? Can he stay healthy? and he's off to a great start.
Yeah, and it was really funny. Not funny, but like it's just like all off season. I guess that's kind of funny. All off season, it was like we need to get Carlos Correa. That's what Cubs fans are talking about. We need to get Carlos Correa. We need to get Trevor Story. But then you look at Nico Hoerner and how he's played for the Cubs, and I think that one spring game when you had that really awesome, Jeter-esque jump throw from shortstop from the deep hole, get the guy at first, and then you're kind of like, okay, like Nico. And then now, like you said, like it's 3 weeks into the season and he's doing really well, hitting. He's picked it up again the bat this week, but that defense has been there consistently, and surprising a lot of people. So I'm talking about question and answering. If he can prove over the entire season that he could be a good shortstop for the Cubs, not even just serviceable, but like above average shortstop with both the bat, and he could play great defense. Cubs might not need to worry about getting a shortstop again this offseason. A lot of that money, that $350 million that could go to Carlos Correa, could end up getting spread around the rest of the diamond.
I think Brendan said it on yesterday's podcast that he's not a free agent until 2026.
Right.
So that if he plays like this or close to this for a whole season, I don't know if he's gonna have a 133 WRC plus for a full season, but if he plays like this and kind of just proves like, I'd belong here in this spot or on this infield, then it kind of does change your outlook with who the Cubs should look into on the free agent market and stuff like that.
And Nico, I mean, talking about when he was in the minor leagues, he did not play very much. I mean, if you look at his entire career since Stanford, minor leagues and in the majors, it's not even probably 2 full seasons worth of work. So he's still adjusting. This season he's one of the best hitters in baseball against sliders so far, which was something he wasn't good at in the past. And so we're still seeing him grow, and I still think there's another level that he could reach. Probably becoming a guy that could hit 10, 15 home runs as he makes some adjustments. So I think the best is yet to come.
Well, he was drafted in 2018 and then got thrown in the fire in 2019.
Right,
He didn't even have a full season of minor league ball in him, and he hasn't gone back down. Like he's just been there.
As the prospect guy that you are, obviously, like Ryan said, he got called up in an emergency situation because Javi got hurt in 2019. Where did you, before that happened, where did you think he was going to make his debut? Like late season. Yeah,
I mean, I probably would have thought, that was pre-pandemic, so I would have thought 2020 would be a full year. I probably would have thought the end of a 2020 season, so a whole another year in the minors. I mean, even in 2019, he was injured during the minor league season and missed some time then. So, I mean, he did not get much development time, and he really is still learning and adjusting.
He's played 98 games at the minor league level, and I think a little chunk of those are like rehab assignment games last year. Yeah. He's had 364 total minor league at-bats, and I'm not even a full season's worth of
so
games.
About 800 total, so a season and a half.
Yeah, like he's still getting there, and I think, again, if he can prove himself as that shortstop, like he proved that the defense is legit, which he's a Gold Glove caliber second baseman, so if he can prove that he can transfer that over to the 6 hole, and then he succeeds with the bat, not going to be their Cubs 2 or 3 hitter, above average all-star hitter, but you can certainly have a good year at the plate. Get close to 300 hitting. Be a guy that you can consistently puts good at bats together. Again, that shortstop job could just be his for the taking if he could do that this year.
It's good to have Rachel back on the chat. She says Nico's so good right now, making contact with 94.8% of the pitches in the strike zone, 8th best in baseball. The guy is class. We just want him to stay healthy. One other guy, I was mentioning 5 things or whatever. Ian Happ so far has been showing that he could be the guy still, and that this is sort of a prove-it year for him too. So there's 5 might even be cutting it a little bit short. Maybe you find out, like you said, Brian, maybe it's 6, 7, 8. But
I mean, Ian Happ's breakout is kind of not helping Clint Frazier's consistent at bats.
Yeah, that's okay. That's okay, Cody. It's about finding out if one guy's doing it, he gets the chance. Right. That's why when you get the chance, you've got to have that.
Exactly.
You got to be ready to go.
That's kind of like my point is in a way it sucks, but we would not be as happy if Ian Happ was off to another slow start like last year. So
this is also his last arbitration year too. Isn't he a free agent at the end of this year? They really need to figure out what they got with Ian Happ. I know he might have another year of arbitration left, but this. Still
Off
that time
top
that
of my head, I don't know.
I think one more.
He might have another year, but it's just still the time where you need to find out if Ian Happ's the guy, because then they probably, they had the talk last year at the end of the season, like, are they going to even tender him a contract for this year? Yeah. And they obviously did, and he's succeeding. But if he didn't, and you go through that whole process again this offseason, if he does that, I have that arbitration again next year. Off the top of my head, I'm blanking. But yeah, so this is the year that you need to find out if Ian Happ is going to be the Ian Happ that the Cubs really want him to be.
And it's his first time playing left field for a long stretch, so you're answering that question of whether he's a left fielder or not.
Now, in order to get him more consistent at bats, if he's proving it, that's another question. Like, he's having success in left. Do you move him to center more so that you can get Rivas if you have to put him in a corner?
Right.
I don't know. I don't know what the answer is, but we'll find out. One other positive or one other good thing moving forward from that series was Kyle Hendricks. You saw good Kyle Hendricks. Now, I think we kind of know it's maybe not going to be like peak Kyle Hendricks every time. That's just maybe not where he's at anymore. But when he has his command and he's pinpointing that fastball and the changeup's working somewhat, he's successful. Like, you're going to get good starts out of Kyle Hendricks.
Considering how the wind was blowing out on Saturday, like, the Cubs put up, 8 or 9 runs that second inning, and I was still, kind of scared just because of how the wind was blowing out. I thought we were in line for an all-time game if you're there for offense. Like, that's how bad the wind was blowing out that day. And he just, they allowed 3 hits as a team.
Yeah.
I think for him it was 1 or 2 of them. So it was a great to see, because obviously his last couple starts have kind of been shaky, not been able to at least go into the 5th inning. So, that to me, when it comes to the starters, you have one good start and then you've got to try to build off it. And we just haven't seen a lot of the starters be able to create that momentum or, positive thinking for themselves. Because, we sit here and talk about how bad Marcus Stroman was that one night, even though despite the conditions and all that, I'm sure he's thinking the same thing and maybe even worse than what we were thinking, So you get that positive mindset into their heads on a more consistent basis. It goes a long way. Maybe not as much as I would think, but you know what I mean.
Yeah. I know when we talked to Stroman, it was a Thursday, I think, was the game that he pitched. No, it was Wednesday. This is the last game of the race here. Is Wednesday.
Yeah, it was Wednesday.
And he knew but then he also takes accountability. He's like, it's on me. Whatever conditions, anything like that, it's on me. And so you could tell he's like, we're talking right now. The second I leave here, I need to find a mirror. I'm gonna do some dry stuff and start prepping for his next start. So, Stroman. It feels like Stroman doesn't even when it's a good start, he doesn't move on, next start. What do I need to do to be good? It seems like he, more than at least a lot of people that have vocalized, is like, I don't care if I have a good start or a bad start, just one start at a time. It's this needs to be a good start. Wipe the slate clean. Next start, okay, this needs to be a good start. It's not like I need to add on, I need to build on this. It's no, every start just needs to be good on its own individual basis. That's what it seems like to me, at least, the way he talks about it.
I just I was thinking a couple things on Saturday as I was watching the game. I was like, well, first of all, now we know why Cody looks a little more jacked today, because he did 10 push-ups after every run. So now he's, got a big chest day in for sure.
Oh, man.
And then I was thinking, God, I hope Cody took the over on PointsBet.
Well,
I was
Cody,
like, please, I hope he took the over.
The guy I sat next to, or the guys that I sit next to at Wrigley on Saturday, 12-0 Cubs are leading. They live bet Cubs minus 17.5.
Oh my God!
The cover.
That's some real degeneracy right there. I wouldn't even do
even
that.
Cody wouldn't go that
That's
far.
to my guys in section 423.
I think one of my buddies in a group chat said I missed it until after the game, but one of them was like, Cody, I know you're live betting Cubs minus 20.5 right now.
Should have.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Anyway, I did bet the over on Saturday, and I did it on PointsBet, which is the best way to support CHGO is if you download the PointsBet app and use code CHGO when you sign up. If you make a $50 or more first-time deposit, receive a free CHGO membership, which unlocks all of our web content. You'll even get a free shirt of your choice from the CHGO locker, just like the one that Ryan is wearing right now.
He's got the swag on.
CHGO
He's got the
Cubs,
swag, yes.
CHGO shirts.
If you have any questions, email pointsbet@allchgo.com and we'll help you. Remember that PointsBet is your home for live in-game betting. They even have a new exclusive feature, live NBA same-game parlay. For the first time ever, build the perfect live same-game parlay only with PointsBet. Combine your favorite bets anytime during the game. You can even boost your live same-game parlays as well. And now online sign-up is available in Illinois. You can actually download the PointsBet app right now and register your account from start to finish, all from your phone. Say it every show. If Luke can figure it out the way that he looks at his phone, anyone can do it. So signing up with the fastest sportsbook is now easier than ever. You can start living your bet life in seconds. Use code CHGO to get 2 risk-free bets up to $2,000. So what are you waiting for? Once the game starts, don't just bet. Live your bet life with PointsBet. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-522-4700.
You know, CHGO, we're doing the podcast thing. We do every team every day. We've got post-game shows, which will be we'll have a lot of them this week. Premium written content. You were out at the ballpark, and then Jared was there on the weekend.
Rachel said she got her merch.
Rachel got her merch?
Yeah, she said she arrived today.
Dope merch arriving overseas now.
UK. Yes. There you go.
Love to see it.
Big time.
Most of Ryan's content, you can find that premium written content at allchgo.com. Be a member there, and then you also get the dope merch like his shirt. You know, Ryan also, I feel like we're not selling the sick drip yet, but if we could match the drip with the merch, we'd have something going. You get a free shirt, and the members-only Discord, which we're still working on the velvet robes, but that's just wait. That's going to hit overseas too. Don't worry, Rachel. We got robes on the way. And we have at Cub Prospects with us, so we are going to talk prospects a little bit today. And we want to do this a lot throughout the season because we've said, listen, the Major League roster is one developmental stage. The next stage is all over the farm system. And so, Brian, we've dipped into the mailbag. We like to do this on Mondays.
Nice.
CH Cubby is asking, how close is Caleb Killian to being ready for the bigs?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you look at the results right now, you would think he is ready for the bigs. His ERA is under 2 in AAA. Although when you watch the starts, I would say he's not quite there yet. He's just still missing a little bit, not quite as sharp as he was at his best last year. The curveball that the Cubs have helped him with it does look a lot better, but we're still not quite seeing him hit all the spots that I think he does when he's at his best. So I would say, you know, it could be something like 4-8 weeks, especially if you need a start and, you know, a doubleheader or something comes up. Give him a try, and then I think he should be ready to go after that.
Well, see, that's why I say Keegan Thompson doesn't have to be your next. That's a guy I want to see come in and pitch for a game and see what happens and where that goes. As
every time we bring up Killian, I always mention the Arizona Fall League start where he threw 6 perfect innings. I mean, the guy was electric in that start, and, you know, I was hopeful that they would put him in AAA to start the year. Yeah. I didn't expect it, admittedly. But, yeah, no, when you first started talking, the way that you said it, kind of, I guess I misunderstood. And so to hear that he's had success, but also not everything is ready yet,
right,
makes a lot of sense. Mm-hmm. So, and he's had 3 starts?
Yeah, 3 starts. He's 24 years old, man. Like he's got plenty of time.
You're right. So pitchers are and again, I'm not like some big prospect guru, but pitchers are the types that I always feel like you got to baby. Like you got to let them figure it out. Yeah, and like just, you know.
Percolate.
You just got to let them like just do their thing for as long as until you absolutely feel like you need them or whatever. And, you know, in this type of season, I feel like we really should just let him at least get 10 starts down there.
I think it's a really good sign when a pitcher can succeed without his best stuff, which Killian has this year. But I think if you're asking a guy to come up to the majors and be ready to be successful, you want him to have been having his best stuff the couple outings before he gets called up. So I'm not quite there yet with him, but it'll be this season.
It'll be this. So what are you thinking, like a post-All-Star break, post-trade deadline kind of thing?
Yeah, I think that'd probably be a perfect time to do it. He's Rule 5 eligible if he's not added to the 40-man roster by the end of the year, so there's no reason not to call him up and give him a shot.
All right, I like to hear that. His follow-up question, CH Cubby wants to know, will Brennen Davis take over for Hayward at some point this season? And we've debated that a lot here.
Right. I mean, we were just talking about Ian Happ playing left and whether he should slide to center. I mean, the nice sort of problem that's developing for the Cubs is that center field doesn't quite feel figured out yet. And when Brennen gets hot and they decide he's ready to go in the majors, it's going to be a really nice way to just slide him into a position that is sort of there for the taking.
What is his, like, does he profile as, like, do you think he could be an above average defensively center fielder?
I've said before, I would think he's going to be about average, maybe a little bit below. He's not as fast as when he first came in the system. Mm-hmm. People said, 5-tool prospect. Well, since then he's added something like 60 pounds of muscle. So the speed is down a little bit, but he takes really long strides. He's got a good, accurate arm. It's not as strong as the best center fielders in baseball, but he sort of checks all the boxes in a just like solid way.
Yeah.
But I think as he grows, maybe it'll end up in left field in 5-8 years, but for the next few centers.
Yeah, because I was going to say, when we watched him in those few spring training games, he did not look the same the last time I had seen him. He looked like he definitely put on like some muscle or something.
Well, and then I'm also curious, like, what happens, and then this is such a future problem. What happens if Brennen Davis comes up, he plays center field, he does really well, and Pete Crow Armstrong, who's been talked about as a very good defensive center fielder, and Ian Happ's still there. Say Suzuki's still in his kind of like how does that kind of shake out? Like,
I mean, those are the problems that teams dream to have. And, but Brennen has played a lot of corners in the minors. He played a lot of right field last year, a little bit of left field. I think it would be no problem to ask him to move over, especially if you have a prospect coming up that you're super excited about defensively.
I think the DH also helps with that. Like just you're like, oh, we have a crowded outfield. Oh no, now we have a DH spot that we can throw. So yeah, I think the Cubs really, really love having that DH spot. Now, as much as David Ross said, like he did also enjoy the strategic, using hitters to pinch hit for pitchers and how long to let them go, stuff like that. The DH, as far as like when some of these guys are coming up for the Cubs that they're really high on and profiles can be really good big leaguers, when you start getting that like roster crunch, that DH obviously is just very helpful in that situation.
For sure.
But guys, there's no room if Frazier and Rivas are playing well too, so let's keep that in mind. All right, let's go to Rachel. She's got a question. She says she wants to know Iowa, Tennessee, South Bend, Myrtle Beach, which is going to be the most exciting this year?
Do you? I think the best team right now is actually Tennessee, and I think Tennessee will eventually also get the best arms from South Bend. South Bend has a great rotation, but when those guys go up to Tennessee, that team is going to be even better. I talked to the catcher Bryce Windham for Tennessee the other day, and I just said, I feel like you have a major leaguer, at every position almost. And I said, how's the energy in the room? And he said it's a great clubhouse. They have a bunch of arms that are mid-90s, a bunch of guys that are hitting home runs, which is not true for most of the system right now. So that's the one that I think, if I had to guess which team is going to win a championship this year, I would guess Tennessee.
Interesting. So if you want to see somebody that's playing in South Bend that's playing well, you better get there quickly is what you're saying.
Especially, DJ Hers, the starting pitching prospect, he's a guy that, if you want to see him and you live around Chicago, find a time to get to South Bend because it might only be, 4-6 weeks.
Oh, wow.
You just wrote something about him, and I know you were talking about that maybe he didn't, if I remember correctly, it was that he didn't have his best stuff, but he still dominated. And so that's an interesting thing that, does that start to show you that level isn't good enough? Because you get to the point where if a guy's doing that and he's not giving you his best stuff, that's not helping his advancement at all. If he's dominating but he's not showing you his best pitches, then it's time to move on because you're going to need your best stuff when you get to the major leagues. Mm-hmm. You're not going to be able to get away with sort of good stuff that night, right?
Well, the thing I look for, especially with pitching prospects, is what happens with fastballs in fastball counts. And DJ in high A right now, he'll be down 2-0 in a count, groove a fastball, sort of middle-ish, and it's getting a swing and miss because he's got a lot of funk to him. He kind of releases it from this like low, far side arm angle. And so if you can throw fastballs by guys when they're expecting fastballs, you're in the wrong spot.
I pull a David Bednar. I kind of want to add on to this one. It's just the narrative forever, as long as I've been watching baseball is that the Cubs can't develop homegrown pitching.
Right.
And now you're seeing it with Justin Steele, Keegan Thompson, Ethan Roberts, who had a couple really good outings, F. Ross, and then right now South Bend has a bunch of good prospects. Caleb Killian's up in AAA, but just what have you seen over, I don't even know, the last decade, last few years that has kind of like, because that narrative started, it hasn't flipped yet, but it's starting to be like, okay, like the Cubs have some good arms, like are developing some really good arms, and once they get to the majors, can they succeed? But it's like, well, how, like that's the start of like that narrative kind of flipping on itself, right?
I think the biggest way to see it is if I looked at the Cubs farm system 5 years ago and I was looking for guys that threw 97 miles an hour, I might have been able to find one or two. Now, if you look for 97 miles per hour on minor league Cubs broadcasts, there are probably 15 guys that can get there. So the Cubs really did change what they were looking for in acquiring young players, and then Craig Breslow's team's done a really good job starting to get those guys over the hump. And right now, I mean, so far this season, the pitching has been way above the hitting on the Cubs farm system side.
You mentioned, Craig Breslow.
Yeah.
How has Dan Kantrovitz, like, he gets in my opinion, he deserves a lot of credit for finding what we would call these random guys like Frank Schwindel, or help finding those guys to like come in last year and just kind of take over or whatever, and now they're on this year's team. Like, how has he helped in scouting for the minor league level and taking chances on maybe guys who aren't necessarily, top tier prospects?
Kantrovitz, you're saying? Yeah, I mean, James Triantos is a really good example of a guy that I think a lot of baseball teams didn't see as a second round pick, maybe even a third round pick. Cubs were thinking about him in the first round, got him in the second round, and then in the offseason, everybody was saying this is a guy that's just outside the top 100 overall prospects. So that's an example of their scouting department doing a really good job, and I think he's helped organize that. I
love to hear that. That's all I'm saying.
I think they need those scouting wins too after the last few years of like all because they obviously, when Theo was in charge, Jed GM, whatever, but like Chris Bryant, Kyle Schwarber, like those guys came up and then they panned out. Like those were great scouting wins that ultimately won the Cubs the World Series. And then a few years after, like Ian Happ had his struggles. I mean, there just wasn't a lot of those guys that they were counting on to come up and be good major league players. Just wasn't really happening over the last few years. I think that's what you saw as far as like just kind of not even the downfall, but just like why the core just ended up not working out. Because a lot of these other guys weren't coming up and backfilling that part of it. So I think we got the James Triantos, the Brennen Davis eventually, all these guys that can come up and the Cubs hope are solid major league players. And then when some of those break out and are superstars, then you obviously have a good depth behind them too.
Yep.
Speaking of prospects, More to Score asks, who is a prospect you are higher on than most, and who's a prospect you might be lower on than most?
Gosh.
Greg says that you're real high on Cole Franklin,
I was
number
just
2 prospect.
Made
in
it
the
way
system.
past the 5-minute mark of Cole Franklin. That's where you're going.
I mean, Cole Franklin's going to have a big second half, but I'll give you a new name. I'll give you a name that I think you're going to see in Chicago this year. The Cubs have a left-handed relief prospect named Brandon Hughes, and he is the first player that's gotten promoted. He just got promoted from AA to AAA, and he's a guy he's a Michigan State guy. Was drafted as an outfielder probably 5 years ago now. After a couple of years, changed to a pitcher, and he's had a ton of success. He was a guy that was right on the border of getting added to the 40-man roster last year. So far this year, I think it's 6 1/3 innings, 1 hit, 10 strikeouts, and he's got one of the best sliders in the system, and it's a position where the Cubs could use a lefty reliever. I mean, they just added Sean Newcomb because I think they're not quite sold that they have that part of their team figured out. So I think he's a guy that's going to come up and have some success, and people are that's going to be like, okay, we are developing arms.
Yeah, 6 1/3, 10 Ks, .32 WHIP, 0 ERA. Like that's good small sample size.
That gets it done.
That's at least a small sample size superstar. If not, if he doesn't keep it going, it's like okay, that's a good first 5 games of the season.
As far as
right
relievers,
there.
I hadn't heard of him. I mean, I've heard of Ben Leeper and was the other guy?
Kane Ukert.
Yeah, Ukert. Yeah, but this is a new name, and God, I can't talk. It's great to see. Not only are they finding a way to develop starters like Killian and other guys like hers, But to see them finding relievers as well, especially with how bullpens are becoming so much more important over the last few years, and we talk about all the time. I love being able to see the Cubs put together a bullpen in the most random way possible. When they start developing arms on the farm at a consistent basis,
right?
That just makes you think of like the wildest things that this team could be at in 2, 3, 4 years.
Yeah, I mean, you think about Scott Efros as a guy who was sort of middling in Double-A a couple of years ago. The Cubs came to him, said, "We think you could be a side armor." Changed, and it unlocks a ton of success. You mentioned, Ben Liepert and Kane Ukert. Ben Liepert was undrafted. The Cubs found him. He went to Triple-A his first year in the minors. Kane Ukert had a 6 ERA in college baseball. The Cubs drafted him, and he's in Triple-A throwing 99. So, if you have to be a real fan to follow minor league relievers, but I do think that as far as seeing the progress the Cubs are making in developing pitchers, that's where you see it more than those arms that you get in the first and second round. Those guys have always had it. But if you can take a guy from literally not being drafted and make a major leaguer, then you have a process that actually other teams will be jealous of.
It's like Max Bain, Joe Nahas, I think, was undrafted.
Yep.
I just know them pretty well, so that's why I mention them, and I'm big fans of them. So,
But Bryan, you mentioned like relievers down in the farm system. What made you want to turn this into one of your focuses, prospects? What do you enjoy about that process?
Yeah, I've been writing about it for a long time. I would say that the thing that got me into it was I saw Albert Pujols when he was in Low A, he was somebody that he wasn't a top 10 prospect if you look back then, and he hit the game-winning double at the game I was at, and I remember like keeping his name sort of, and the next year he was Rookie of the Year, and I thought, oh, how cool that you can, go to the minor leagues and see what's coming to a certain extent. And so that's what got me into it. And I wrote about it on sort of the national level for a while, and then stopped writing for a while, came back to just write about the Cubs, and just sort of embrace the fandom of it.
How tough is that? Because I know the way the minor leagues, the more stats is becoming available every year, but it's also there's definitely not at the level of what MLB does as far as StatCast and game day and all this stuff. That how hard is it to keep track and really focus? Because even in there's not always minor league game feeds that you can watch and stuff.
Right.
How tough does that make it?
Well, it's better than it used to be because there are the Cubs, each of their affiliates do have feeds, which not every team can say. But I think it's really important that you do have to watch the games, because I think even now more than ever with the changes they've made to the minor leagues, if you're just sort of scouting the stat line, you're going to miss a lot of stuff. So, we do have to set aside some time to actually sort of watch the games. And, I'm on my phone in the morning just fast forwarding 15 seconds at a time to see individual pitches and stuff like that. But yeah, it's fun.
There you go.
that's pretty wild that you saw Albert Pujols before, and now you've watched his entire career play out. And as much as I can't stand the Cardinals, I mean, he's one guy that I definitely respect from that franchise over the last 20 years. The one guy I can say that it's not Albert Pujols level, but I did see Jazz Chisholm play at Kane County a few years ago. That's awesome. And now he's in the MLB. He's becoming a very popular player.
Miguel Cabrera played at Kane County, right?
Yes, he did.
Yeah, he did.
Kevin 3,000 hitter
as a shortstop.
Oh man!
Wow.
Kane County used to have some names on that.
Schwarber played there for a week or something like that.
Yeah.
There's names on Kane County used to have those names, man.
They do again. They're just not Cubs yet. You just have to wait and see. Hey, if you enjoy CHGO, one way to continue to grow is to download the PointsBet app. Use the code CHGO. When you sign up, not only are you going to get 2 risk-free bets up to $2,000, but if you make a $50 or more first-time deposit, you get a free CHGO membership, which unlocks all of our web content. You'll even get a free shirt of your choice from the CHGO locker. And if you have any questions, just email pointsbet@allchgo.com, and we'll help you out. And in case you missed it, online sign-up available now in Illinois. You can actually download the PointsBet app, register your account, start to finish, all from your phone. Takes less than 5 minutes. Took me about 3, so should take most people about 1. You sign up with the fastest sports book, and it's easier than ever, and you can start living your bet life in just seconds. So what are you waiting for? Once the game starts, don't just bet. Live your bet life with PointsBet. Gambling problem, call 1-800-522-4700. Let's see. Thank you very much. Anybody in the chat with any new questions coming in here?
I did see one. Greg said, is it a scientific fact that relievers perform better when they have glasses? Ethan Roberts and my Riley Martin.
The Cubs have been acquiring a lot of red-headed hitting prospects, so maybe it's red-headed hitting prospects and relievers with glasses. That's their new money.
The relievers who wear the glasses, they do come off intimidating, like no doubt.
That's what advanced analytics tells you these days.
Did you have you seen any of the game with pitch clocks? I know Rachel asked that in the thing too, and said if you've caught any of those games, have you liked the look of the pitch clock at the minor league level, and are pitchers adjusting to that?
It would blow your guys' mind how different it feels when you're watching a game with these pitch clocks. I mean, they're really enforcing them. I've seen more than a few automatic strikeouts so far. And yeah, I mean, I said I usually fast forward pitches like 15 seconds at a time. Now I can't even do it because they've already thrown the next pitch. It's cutting off 30 minutes to the average games at the minor league level. And so it's done a ton for the game. And I have asked a couple pitchers, shouts to Max Bain. I asked him how he was doing with the pitch clock. And he said, it took a little bit of an adjustment, and those guys are still trying to figure out sort of when in the pitch clock their body's most ready to go. But they've adjusted, and they actually like it.
See, I am all for it. And they are doing it the right way. Start at the minor league level. Those guys will come up having done it, so they're not like just caught off guard when they get to the major leagues and doing it. You've got to speed up the game somehow, and that is one way of doing it. I still also think not only the pitch clock, keep the batters going. Like I didn't need wristbands adjusted 15 times. You should be able to step out of the box several times, but not every pitch. I don't need you stepping out.
You're actually seeing hitters called for automatic strikes in the minors more than you're seeing pitchers called for automatic balls. So the hitters are having the tougher time with it, because if you step out of the box, I think it's more than once you get called for it. So
really?
That's been interesting.
See, I'm for that too.
Yeah, because it's what, 14 seconds with bases empty, and then 18 with runners on base. Like it feels like short time. Like how much shorter is that actually than like the average in the past? Like I don't do.
The game 30 minutes. That's 30 minutes is a long time to cut off a game.
I think a lot of it that's slowing it down is like you see a lot of pitchers step off a lot, and then like they'll and it becomes like a head game a little bit whenever you see that type of stuff, or
just the batter like stepping out of the box, because every batter has their own like pre-pitch thing they do, so they step out of the box every single time.
Yeah, Derek Jeter would not be able to handle the new rules.
Nomar would not be able to handle it.
Nomar
would not be able to handle it.
Nomar would hate it. Yeah,
because I know. Tim Stebbins over at NBC Sports Chicago did like a story on that, and he said like David Robertson, who's 37 years old and has grown up playing a game that there's no pitch clock, like did not like the idea, but I'm like, I think it just feels like that's coming regardless of like if major league players like it or not. It's could be coming as soon as next season, and that's just I think he asked David Ross about that too, and Ross is like, and even the smallest change, it sucks. Like it's tough. It's adjusting the way you've always done things sucks, and it's tough. But when things happen, you have to do it. Like just even he mentioned, because he's a catcher, he mentioned when they the blocking home plate rules, all that stuff got changed. I think it was after Buster Posey got hurt.
Yeah,
he's like, in that, like he's like, you never would have thought that stuff like that would change, and then when it does, you have to adjust. And so just pitchers in the majors, there might be a good chunk of them that don't like it and don't want that, but that's gonna come, and so you just gotta change.
Deal with it if you want the sport to thrive.
Right. I think what MLB needs to do, if they decide they're gonna do it, and it sounds like they probably will because of how it's really been a success at the minor league level, they gotta announce this like early, like off season. That way, it gives pitchers time to start practicing like with it or something like that. You know what I mean? Like in their bullpens that they do before spring training and stuff like that. So I'm sure MLB will find a way to fuck that up, but that's just my 2 cents.
Rachel asked in the chat, what is your ETA on PCA?
Yeah, Pete Crow Armstrong's probably the most exciting current story in the farm system. He's for the those unfamiliar, that's who they got for Javi Baez at the trade deadline last year. And he's probably having the best offensive season of any prospect right now in low A, though. So he's got a ways to go. I would say 2024 is probably your better case scenario, and 2025 maybe the more realistic one. But yeah, he looks really good. He's showing more power than he has in the past, and still showing speed and defense. So
he's like 18, 19?
19 or 20.
19 or 20, okay.
And he still profiles as an elite defender too. Like that's
making a ton of contact, playing good defense. It's been a really good season for him.
Ben Wilkinson says he agrees with Rachel too. PCA looks legit.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I can deal with that. Any other prospects you want to point out to us that we haven't thought of? I mean, there's a lot of guys, right? Like this is what makes the
When's
future
Max Bang
exciting.
getting the call to Double-A? That way I find time to go see him out in South Bend.
Yeah, we want to see him in South Bend.
We got Max's first start was yesterday. He'd been piggybacking as a reliever, and yesterday he got his first start. So he looked really good for those first 3 innings. Allowed a homer in the 4th, but you can tell he's really close. His slider is much better than it was last year. Had a strikeout that was 1-2-3 slider for the 2nd straight game, which I love to see. Max is doing good. I think second half he'll be in Tennessee, but I think we got a little time. I think in May we should organize a trip out there.
Yeah.
Now you do the podcast with him, right?
Yes.
The Bain campaign.
Bain campaign.
You have fun doing that?
Yeah, it was really cool. I went to Max at the end of last year. I said, what are you going to do for content in the off season? Because you got to do something. Because he's just a really interesting guy that has a lot to say and is really good at sort of giving a voice to minor leaguers. And he said, I don't know, you have any ideas? And so I sort of pitched a version of what we ended up doing, and it was really fun and nice to not have to search for your own guests and just have Max, lean on being a professional basebal player to find guys.
You guys had some good guests, not just on the minor league level, but on major league level as well.
Yeah.
So, I've enjoyed checking it out.
Yeah. So, and if you're looking for a new Cubs podcast or a baseball podcast, it's another one to be checking out right now.
Bain campaign.
Bain
That's
campaign.
a good name, man. That's just a really good name.
Yeah, we'll pick it back up at the end of the season. We're letting Max right now focus on the job of pitching, but next winter for sure, season 2 will be
letting
back.
him focus on his day job.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's a good thing to do.
There you go.
So looking ahead for the Cubs here, they have a tough stretch. Like we talked about it earlier in the podcast, and that's what made losing to the Pirates rough. But I will say this. It doesn't mean they can't beat some of these teams just because it looks a little daunting ahead of time. And they're in pretty good company. The Braves, who won the World Series, are 7-10. The Cubs are 7-9. And they're not alone either. The Red Sox, 7-9. Most people have them as a playoff team. The White Sox, could be a lot worse. It could be the White Sox. You could have all these expectations, all these injuries, and not going well. 6-9. Astros, 7-8. Phillies signed all those hitters. We were all jealous of everybody. 6-10. So some teams that we thought had huge off seasons and certainly have bright futures this season. Listen, I wouldn't be surprised to see a lot of those teams still in the postseason. Just because they're off to a slow start in the first 20 games doesn't mean it's the end of all be all. Like, those teams are probably still, a lot of those are still.
You just got to look at the Nationals in 2019. They had they were like a few games under 500 later on in the season, and then ended up winning it all. Like these teams are a lot more like, at least profile to be a lot better than that. Everyone thought that Nats team was that won the World Series. So I think most of those teams honestly will be in the playoffs, and then you'll have your little Flyers. Also, the Braves series coming up. The Cubs are very lucky that this is not the week that Ronald Acuna returns, because he's supposed to, I think, like projected or like expected first week of May. So it's like they barely avoid Ronald Acuna, who I remember we were talking about like who might be good, and I mentioned Acuna, and one of you two were like, oh, he's supposed to be out like half the year.
I'm like MVP.
Yeah, when we're talking about MVPs,
preseason,
and I said Acuna, and then I think maybe you said like, isn't he supposed to be out until like July? I'm like, I think he might be back by like beginning of May, and then that just happened to like pan out, like it killed that rehab. But the Cubs do get to avoid Ronald Acuna's bat for their series in Atlanta.
The best.
What do you want to see out of that Braves series? I want to see Stroman. I want to see Stroman pitch well. I think if you find one thing in that Braves series, that's what you're looking for is a good start out of Stroman.
I want to see that. I want to see, kind of like what Brian said earlier, we want to start seeing more questions answered, right? Like get Rivas and and Nico back in the lineup, or at the very least get Nico back in the lineup. But I understand trying to find the right matchups and stuff.
Yeah.
I just think when you have a good game, like why would you put that person on the bench the next day? Like when baseball is such like a routine like type game, and like when you're feeling good, you're like you don't want to be put on the bench the next day. Like that just kind of ruins any kind of momentum you really kind of have.
It really is just all because of that's not been a normal offseason. Like if they had a normal season to build up and all this different stuff, you're probably talking about a different story. Like after the first week, you're seeing a lot more consistent lineups. But right now, it's just not only is David Ross trying to figure out what he's got with a lot of different guys, but he's also trying to make sure guys are getting into, because we're not even a month, like you said, not even 20 games into the season yet. You got to make sure these guys are healthy for the long haul. It's a marathon. So I understand like the frustration of why is Patrick Wisdom sitting the day after he hits a home run. Like it's that kind of stuff. But it's also like you also see where David Ross is coming from, where he's like, we can't worry about if you're really that worried about the Pirates series in April when they still have another like 12, 13 games against them going forward. Like you want to make sure those guys now are healthy for when those games come ahead. So I get
zone, Ryan.
Yeah, I get both sides of the argument.
Spin it.
You want to see these guys healthy, or you want to see these guys play, but you also want to see them healthy when games, especially the Cubs, want to be competitive when games second half of the season actually matter. You want Nico Hoerner to not be on the 60-day IL, right?
Yeah.
So that's just where I see the frustration, but I also see where when David Ross tells you like, hey, I need to get these guys days off. Like I can't have Nico Hoerner playing 7 games in a row, and right now Jonathan Villar is our only shortstop depth. That's why he's like, that kind of stuff. Like, I totally get it, because you can see even on the pitching side, you saw the pitchers aren't built up. Like Kyle Hendricks was the first one. Between his opening day start and his start on Saturday, no one else had managed to go past 5 innings. His 5 1/3 on opening day and his 7 on Saturday was like, those are the only 2 more than 5 1/3 or more. So you see it on the pitching side, and then I think maybe the offensive side you don't see it as much because it's there too. These guys are still building up to playing 100 and plus games, 9 innings a game. So that's what you see from it. Sorry.
No, it's all right. We're almost out of time, but Ben Wilkinson has been asking about Porter Hodge throughout the chat here. A quick scouting report on Porter Hodge, and then we'll wrap it up.
I know. Shouts to Ben. This is a deep pull. Porter Hodge was drafted a couple years ago out of a Utah high school. Cubs kept him sort of on the backfields, building him up. He's had a really successful start to the year in Myrtle Beach. He's got a good slider, fastball, sort of low 90s. If it continues along this track, then he's going to have to move up to South Bend, and he's definitely somebody I'm looking at as an early breakout guy, but we haven't gotten a ton of great feeds from Myrtle Beach yet, so I haven't gotten to watch to see what's new. But last year I was really impressed with his slider.
Ben, there you go. The Porter Hodge scouting report.
That's diving real deep.
I'm
sitting here like, who is Porter Hodge, dude?
This has been fun. Will you come back and do it again with us?
Absolutely.
Sounds good.
We didn't ruin it. Let's go, guys.
Yeah.
Big time.
Thanks to our guest, Bryan Smith of Bleacher Nation. He's also at Cub Prospects on Twitter. Make sure you follow him. Thank you for dropping in to check out the CHGO Cubs Podcast presented by PointsBet. Make sure you rate and review the podcast, please. Cubs and defending World Series champion Braves coming up on Tuesday, and hopefully some flying W's this week.
Can only hope.
We'll see.
Can only hope.
It's going to be a tough week, but we'll see.
All right, we'll see you later, and thanks again to Bryan.